So I made a video a couple of weeks ago about who I thought was going to die this Christmas in Eastenders, and I said I thought it was going to be Martin Fowler. However, I wanted to make a part 2 now because I don't feel like I gave enough reason as to why I thought it was going to be Martin, and I completely forgot to say even who I think is going to kill him. So I feel like I rushed the end of the last video, so I want to make this little part 2 just to clarify what I meant and why I think it. But before I do want to point out that since that video we now have a new suspect on who could die this Christmas, that being Freddie's dad, Graham Foster. I mean, he's not a very nice man. He raped Freddie's mum, and that's how he became his dad. So him being the horrible man that he is, you could see a scenario where he tries to attack one of the 5 women in the pub that night on Christmas. So maybe it's Graham Foster. I'm gonna still stick with Martin though. Even though for the first time we actually have a clue as to who it's going to be. It's like our first lead, and that is on the 13th of July. We saw Rocky have a stag do, and in it there's a poker game where we see Nish put cufflings down, as in like to raise the bet, and these are supposedly the same cufflings from the night of the murder, and these belong to the man that died, or the man that dies is wearing them. And so Nish or Rocky wins the bet and he gets the cufflings, and then he gives them to Jack as like a, I don't really want them, you can have them. And Jack gets them and he's like, oh, you could see he looks interested in them. So that makes Jack Branning our now number 1 prime suspect as who's going to die this Christmas. And that's all we have to go on really. He's the only clue we have logically, based on what we've been told, is that it's Jack Branning. But that also makes him the most obvious, so I'm going to stick with Martin. And the reason why is because we know Martin is going to be at Sharon's wedding. And if you look at the crime scene, she's in a wedding dress, so her wedding's the only one we know that goes ahead. And Martin's like living with Sharon at the moment, so he's probably going to be in the wedding. But maybe Jack isn't, maybe he can't make it, and you know, Martin wants to borrow his cufflings. But why would Martin want to borrow Jack's cufflings? I hear you ask? I have an answer. We see in the same episode that Martin, because they do a dress up, and Martin is dressed as James Bond.
Well, he's Bond, James Bond.
I ain't no Daniel Craig, but he'll do.
Now, James Bond, we know, is actually known for wearing cufflinks, except in that episode, Martin doesn't wear cufflinks. And so you can assume that like Martin's a fan of James Bond. Maybe if he wants to wear a suit, he's going to want to wear cufflinks like James Bond because he likes James Bond. That seems a bit out there, but the reason I think this is because I remember during lockdown they did like a behind the scenes, I think it was Secrets from the Square.
I mean, it's great fun. I spent the whole day with a gun. I thought I was James Bond.
A fully fledged villain.
Looking for a new one right now, mate.
A fully fledged.
Now, I might be over-analysing this, but to me it seems like the actor that plays Martin seems to like James Bond. And now we see Martin like dressed up as James Bond for the stag do. And so to me, what I assume is that it was actually the actor asking the writers if Martin could be dressed up as James Bond because the actor's a fan of James Bond. That's what makes the most sense to me. And if he has that kind of influence over the writers, then maybe if he found out that he was going to be killed off at Christmas, then maybe he'd want to be dressed the most like James Bond when he dies, since that's a character he likes. Now, with that out of the way, who do I think is going to kill Martin? Well, we actually recently see Keanu has somewhat of a motive to kill him, because he helped Sharon get Peggy out the country, and you see Keanu's like pretty angry with Martin about this, However, you do see him sort of get over it by the end of the episode. So unless that anger stirs up again, I don't think Keanu's that likely. I think the most obvious person would be Theo, because he's obviously jealous of Martin for being with Stacy, so you can see him getting jealous at Christmas and killing Martin in front of all the girls. But to me, he's the most obvious, so obviously I don't think it's going to be him. So that's when I came to the conclusion, hold on a minute, Stacy has had like episodes in the past where she gets paranoid, or we've seen her kill Archie Mitchell. Like we've seen it, she might get paranoid again, is what I'm saying. Maybe because we see her nervous at the moment with her worrying or wondering who our stalker's going to be. Maybe for whatever reason by Christmas she still doesn't know, and she has reason to believe it's Martin, and kills him accidentally in an outburst whilst thinking it's him. And that was my theory, that Stacy kills Martin, until I remembered the way Kathy looked at Sookie. And to me, the way Kathy looks at Sookie, it really looks like Sookie was involved somehow. And if it was Stacy killing Martin, there's just something missing. And then I thought to myself, what if it's Nish that kills Martin? And that's the theory I'm going with, because we saw Nish get angry with Mitch once for no reason whatsoever. So, Nish got paranoid that Mitch fancied his wife Sookie, and all he did was go over to their house to help with the sink or something, or mend it as a mate, and he got paranoid, and he's killed someone out of jealousy before. Maybe for whatever reason Nish gets paranoid again, but this time for Martin fancying Sookie, and he kills him in an angry outburst again. And then that would explain why Kathy looks at Sookie the way she does, because Sookie's the wife of the murderer. So that's what I think's going to happen. But let me know if this makes sense or if this is likely. I'm sticking with Martin. But yeah, let me know what you think or why I'm wrong, or if I've made it more clearer why I think it's Martin. But yeah, thank you.